Masers vary for a lot of reasons. They don't care about our models and what we think causes it. Proudly presented here by the GERA Foundation. Folks, I'm back. It's been about 6 months since I made any content. Sorry about that. Been kind of busy. We were renovating this place for my brother and sister. We laid 20,000 square feet of concrete. We built a 4,000 square foot shop for Ian's toys, sports cars, old trucks, things like this, and a lot of other things, and a fair bit more work to do, but we're getting close to being done. At least we have a working kitchen now. You can see it behind me. I recently gave a presentation of my present work at the University of Alberta, and a very bright student asked me a simple question during the presentation. And he asked me, "What do you mean by masers don't care?" And I'm going to try to explain that to you in this video. So buckle up. The GERA Foundation presents this series called Navigating Research. 62 years ago, this character here, Harold Weaver from Cal Berkeley, discovered what he thought was a new molecule he named Mysterium. Turned out it was simply stimulated emission in the ground states of the hydroxyl maser, 1665, 1667 megahertz. But the name he coined initially was really very appropriate because these objects really are still very mysterious. No idea.
By the way, why are we wearing bras on our heads?
Ceremonial.
Masers don't care. A maser is just a laser except at radio wavelengths. In this case, we use the word M for microwave, okay, because that's what they originally created. A maser was created before a laser. And these things are found in nature, in astronomy in particular, everywhere, in all sorts of phenomena. We find them in extragalactic sources. I study high-mass star-forming regions where there's a great deal of energy, and that energy basically, literally energizes the molecules that I study. So all you really need, and here's my little schematic here, is you energize a molecule, the photons in the molecule start cascading down by decay rates to each level. And as long as the upper level has a faster decay rate than the lower level, you'll always have the quick cascade and nothing will happen. Fortunately, when there's a transition where the upper level and the A coefficient has a little slower a decay rate than the lower one, you'll get a population inversion. And then all that happens is a photon, a seed photon, at exactly that transition frequency will come along and it will cause stimulated emission. All those photons that haven't fallen yet will suddenly fall very quickly, even faster than the decay rate, and then that will give off photons traveling along the path length with the same frequency, the maser frequency. Now, as long as you have a long enough path length where all those molecules have roughly the same frequency, you're going to detect a maser at Earth. It's that simple. So really, all we really need is energized molecules and a long enough path length that has velocity coherence in it. That's it. And then we get masers.
What has that got to do with it?
Masers don't care.
Back off, man. I'm a scientist.
In the heady days after the discovery of Mysterium masers, I'm talking late 60s, early 70s, people started to try to conceptualize what a maser might look like. One group thought they might be spherical clouds. Others thought they could be cylindrical. A third group came along and talked about multiple cloudlets and with sufficient path length through them with the same velocity coherence. But the simple answer is all of them are possible. As long as there's a long enough path length and the molecules have a population inversion and they're being stimulated, we're going to see that maser. It doesn't care. It does not care. Masers don't care. You're going to see a theme pretty quickly here. In the 70s and 80s, people started talking about radiative versus collisional. They were talking about how to pump the molecules that were mazing. Pretty simple. You need the energy, so we have to get the energy into the upper levels to cause that cascade story. But the simple reality is there are objects that are both radiatively and collisionally excited. For example, water molecules can be. There are class 1 methanol masers and class 2 methanol masers. The class 2 tend to be radiatively excited. The class 1 tend to be found in areas where there's collisional excitation, though it's not clear that they're being excited by the collisional. The point is the maser, it just doesn't care. It just needs to have a population inversion. However it gets to that is the key. Accept the possibility that you might have molecules becoming masers in either of these types of regimes.
Oh, yes, I remember now. Missed it by that much.
Masers don't care. I never gave much thought to this whole idea until after the discovery of periodic methanol masers. In fact, until after I saw two of my good friends standing toe-to-toe arguing about in favor of their model over the other to explain the periodicity in 2017 at a conference in Italy. And I had to walk away, and I started thinking about that, and I started looking at other sources besides this one. I've looked at this one for many hours. And I started realizing it looked like there's evidence of some of these different models in different sources, which made me start to wonder, if you have a maser, it doesn't matter the model. What matters is you just have to vary something. So if it's the path length, or it's the number of seed photons entering the cloudlet, or the energy source is varying, or the conditions in the cloudlet are changing, all of those things can cause variation in the maser, and if it's done in a periodic way, you get periodicity. Simple. I was starting to think that maybe there's more than one example. Or in other words, maybe most of these models, or all of them, are perfectly reasonable, and we will find examples of each if we look hard enough. Then our Japanese colleagues released their Ibaraki long-term monitoring data, and I went and I looked at all the sources, and when I looked at this one, which I've been looking at for hundreds of hours, I noticed very quickly a second period at 51 days as opposed to the prototypical 243 days. Once I noticed that, I realized immediately that I was right. There's probably multiple ways in which I can cause the maser to vary. The maser just doesn't care. It could be pulsation and colliding wind binaries in the exact same source. So this is the reason why I started coming up with this expression, masers don't care. And then I started looking back through the history of masers, and I began to realize that all of these arguments have always been the same. Somebody wants to defend their model. And therein lies the crux. You have to have an open mind. You might have a perfectly good model, but there could be another model that's also equally good. And in fact, there may be examples of both. It may be just a matter of statistics in the end, which one has more of the other. In other words, there may be mostly pulsating stars causing this and a handful of colliding wind binaries. Who knows? But that's the beauty of it. You open your mind to the possibility that there are other solutions besides the one you've come up with. That's why I say masers don't care. This famous statistician might be absolutely onto something here. We are all one observation away from proving that our model is wrong. But it doesn't mean that it isn't helpful. Let us put into practice, let me practice what I preach as it relates to masers don't care. This here is my most recent, I wouldn't call them discoveries, but my most recent work as it relates to the prototypical source periodic methanol maser G9.62. We've discovered as of probably mid-November last year that not only is the flux periodic, so is the variation in the line width and the velocity during the flare cycles. And this is flare cycle 25. And if I was to apply my simple LSD model, and it doesn't mean I lie around doing heavy drugs, it means be a lazy, stupid detective. find a simple solution and don't look for more complex ones while you don't have enough data to constrain any of it. So LSD, lazy, stupid detective. And you can see here the simplest one you can have is a 3 Gaussian model that basically have 3 Gaussian features that actually, when they're added together, they look like the single very bright feature that I can see in my data set. And remember, I have a data set with a 44 kilometers per second resolution. And so what I have to do is I have to vary this thing. So if I vary the reddest feature first, and it's the brightest one, and then I let the bluer ones vary afterwards, it'll cause the velocity to blue shift and the line width to line broaden. So I'm able to find a series of parameters from this 3 Gaussian model, and I vary things like I can vary the line width, I can vary the flux. Mostly I vary the flux. The primary contributors to fitting this was the flux. The one feature, the reddest feature, has to be much brighter than the other two, and it also has to have a much faster flare cycle. Literally, it's 15 days up and 22 days down versus 25 up and 100 days down, or something like that. And there's a range I can get. And I can get a range of solutions, but you can see I get a pretty good fit. So my LSD fit is pretty good. Now, if I'm applying Masers don't care, I have to recognize that there's probably a whole bunch of other models that will also fit this data pretty well. Other possible explanations. So it may not just be line blending. It could be that there's a polarization variation occurring in the molecule or in the region. It could be that there's a binary star system causing the maser to be pulled, red shifted, blue shifted. Who knows? But all of those things probably exist in data sets out there. So I'm not saying that this is the only answer to the data I have here. I'm simply saying I've got a pretty good fit. It explains what I'm seeing now. As I automate my program, I might get a better fit, and then it'll give me a better idea what the light curves would look like for the individual masers, which are heavily line blended, which is kind of cool. If my model is correct, I'm actually seeing masers that are not identifiable in a single dish, which is kind of cool. But it doesn't make it correct. It just means it fits the data. And so what I say again, masers don't care. This is one possible solution. It may be right, it may be wrong, it may be right along with a lot of other models that are right. I don't know. So masers don't care, and they don't care that my model gives a reasonably good fit here. I still think that I live by this rule, and so should you. Do masers really care?
You go. Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
I hope this video has answered that student's question. I hope I've done a pretty good job putting forward that, in fact, it is we who care too much. We get tied to our models, and we forget that there may be other possibilities. And we've closed our minds. We can't do that. We must always keep an open mind. We look at it from the maser's perspective. It does not care. It just varies. We care about our models. Maybe we shouldn't do that. So keep an open mind. And I think that will help us to get more insights, gain more insights from the observations that we collect all the time. And the more data we collect, the more models we disprove. The GERA Foundation will produce more videos like this. Please like, share, or subscribe if you enjoyed this video.